Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Brass Junkies. I am your host, Andrew Hitz, and I am joined by my beautiful assistant, Lance LaDuke. Lance, Howard. Well, yeah. I was thinking of Vanna White, and then I was like, that's when I said beautiful and assistant, and I was like, there's a lot of layers there. I'm just going to leave it. So
just say lackey and get it over with.
my euphonium lackey, Lance LaDuke. Lance, how are you?
I was better about 45 seconds ago.
I was picturing you flipping letters.
I was flipping something.
And wearing an evening gown, it's not awkward at all.
Is there an F? Yeah, as a matter of fact, there is.
And is there a U?
There's two of them.
I'd like to solve the puzzle. F-U. Oh, there you go. Well, the good news is that we're recording this, and we have two more interviews in the next 3 hours, which are going to get real punchy.
Well, the good news also is that this won't be one of those 45-minute intros, because the next interview is in 9 minutes.
This is true, and we're old. We have to pee in between every interview. So, and it takes about 7. We got to be quick here. All right. So
thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Yeah, there you go. Weston Sprott of the Metropolitan Opera, trombone player. Boy, what he tells some good stories. So some really good stories.
Big brain. So, it's just a really cool brain guy. Yeah, I think you're gonna like it a lot.
Yep, big thinker, and he's also very articulate. So, which is awesome. So, we need to thank Parker Mouthpieces for providing the hosting for. I almost said TEM. Autopilot is a dangerous thing, kids. I'm going to pull over and then try this again. We also need to thank Parker Mouthpieces for providing the hosting for the Brass Junkies. Parker Mouthpieces offers fine, customizable component mouthpieces for horn, trombone, euphonium, and tuba, including the Andrew Hitz Artist Model Tuba mouthpiece and the Lance LaDuke Model Euphonium mouthpiece.
What?
You can find out more at parkermouthpieces.com or follow them on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Speaking of which...
Thanks, Mary Pappert School of Music at Duquesne University, the brass area. Thanks to Jim Nova. They are a proud sponsor. Well, I don't know, proud. They're a sponsor of the podcast, and we appreciate them helping support the show. If you're interested in finding out more about what's going on at the Mary Pappert School of Music at Duquesne University, you can click on the link below, Pappert. Thank you to Jim Nova and the Mary Pappert School of Music.
Have they ever thought about rebranding Duquesne to something easier to spell, like Smith?
My son just admitted to me that until recently he thought it was Duquesne. And the thing that made me feel the best was that there was no reason for him to say that out loud. Like, I thought, okay, he's got some self-confidence. He just owned up to that. I've been teaching there since before he was born.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty funny. Yeah, there you go. All right. And I think that, thank you to everybody who's gone to Patreon and become a patron there. You guys are awesome. You are going to love the bonus episode with Weston. For the bonus episodes always come out a week after the regular full episode, full interview, which will always be free, but you can donate as little as $1 per episode, which is a grand total of $26 an entire year, and you get access to a bonus episode with a little bit more silly stuff with every person that we interview. And he told a couple of whoppers in there, so really good stuff. So Patreon people can look for that next week. And thank you to all of you. If you want to become one or learn more about it, you can go to patreon.com/thebrassjunkies, which we will link to, as always, in the show notes. And thank you to everyone who's left a rating or a review on the iTunes store. So Lance actually just had a really good idea, and that was, it does happen. So which he typed into the to the box, which I was trying to read while I was talking. And I'm a tuba player. Talking is hard to begin with, but we would love to hear from you guys. And now he's typing, but I bet, see that I knew that. So he typed two things that were actually pertinent and good for the show.
Which two?
And then as soon as I said that I was trying to read and talk at the same time, I saw saw Lance's typing, and then farts are funny popped up. So I think I need a less mouthy assistant. So we should. He keeps on. All right, I've now taken my my Evernote, which I always have open with notes on the guest. I've now covered the chat box so that it's now gone. I will read the rest of it later. So we would love to hear from you. If you would like to suggest a guest or a topic that you would like us to talk about, then please shoot us an email, pedalnotemedia@gmail.com. You can also find us on our brand new Facebook page, which is facebook.com/pray4yens. And we're also rocking the Instagram lately. A lot of you have followed us there. And you can learn all about our next guest coming up is Bill Pritchard, who's a badass sousaphone tuba player, does a lot with electronics. He has a mohawk. I think now it's a faux hawk. Sometimes it's mo, now it's faux. But he's awesome. So you can check him out in a couple of weeks. And I think that's going to do it. Anything else, Lance?
No, I'll miss you terribly for the 4 minutes we're not talking.
All right, that sounds good. So without further ado, we will get to our conversation with Weston Sprott of the Metropolitan Opera. And today we are joined by a member of the Metropolitan Opera Orchestra. This is trombonist Weston Sprott. Weston, how are you this morning?
Pretty good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, it is our pleasure. You had a show last night, and you've got 2 shows today, and you are fitting our crappy little podcast in the middle of all of that. So we are very appreciative of that. Cool. What show was last night?
Last night we actually did the Verdi Requiem, which is kind of unusual for we don't usually do non-opera stuff at the Opera House, but I think due to a change in some scheduling from last year, we're actually putting on 4 or 5 performances of Verdi Requiem. So the orchestra was in the pit, and the full chorus and soloists were on stage, and place was completely packed, and it was a lot of fun.
That's pretty cool.
Wow. Yeah, that's awesome. And what are you doing this today?
Well, last night I played second on Verdi, and this afternoon I'm going to play alto on Magic Flute, and tonight we're doing Thais, the Massenet. With the famous meditation from Thais that every trombone player tries to play on trombone and pretend they're a violinist.
What instrument do you play tonight?
I'm playing. I don't know what I'm playing tonight. I can't. I'll find out when I get there. I know it's playing trombone. Whether it's first or second, I forget because I'm in this. We're in this interesting spot right now where the trombone section is a little shorthanded. So I've been playing acting principal for the last few seasons. But since my regular job is to play second and we're kind of shorthanded, I kind of go back and forth depending on what show it is or what the needs are or different things like that. So it's always switching.
So 3 different programs on 2 different instruments in the span of like 30 hours.
That's super normal at the Met. That's
I know.
Yeah, I mean the Met schedule. We usually are rotating 4 different operas in performance and 1 or 2 different things in rehearsal at any given time. So whereas most symphony orchestras or even most opera houses are doing a particular show that week. We're doing a different show almost every day and 2 different shows on Saturday. So it's not uncommon to be running, for example, like Turandot, Madame Butterfly, Otello, and Cenerentola at the same time while you're rehearsing the Ring Cycle or something. That's very standard fare at the Met.
We were joking when Lance had a wisdom teeth emergency. Don't worry, it wasn't his wisdom
teeth,
but
I couldn't find it.
Yeah. But so Weston and I were chatting beforehand, and and he had mentioned that he had just woken up, et cetera. And then I said, "Oh, so you don't have a 3-year-old?" Because my 3-year-old woke me up earlier. And I made it clear that I can't stand parents who in any way claim that they have a monopoly on being tired. Anyway, the conversation was kind of meandering, and then I was joking like, well, you're in one of the most demanding orchestras in the world, and so I think you don't need any other excuses than that to be tired. But that's crazy. I don't think I'd ever really heard it put like that clearly in terms of the fact that you guys can be working on / performing 4 programs at one time. Is how unique is that? I mean, I know that most symphony orchestras don't do that. Is that normal for an opera company?
We're the only American opera company that's really a repertory house that does that type of thing. I think we have some similarity with some of the big European houses like Vienna or La Scala or Berlin Staatsoper or companies like that, where they run probably a similar number of performances a year. But the difference between a lot of them and us is that we rehearse everything. I remember having we rehearse everything. I mean, which is great in some ways because it helps create a really clean product more often. But, even an opera like La Boheme or Carmen, which the orchestra knows like the back of its hand, that will still get at least 2 or 3 rehearsals every single season whenever we do it. And,
Wow.
And even the bel canto stuff, like a Donizetti, Lucia de Lammermoor, will play it. And I used to text message Ian Bousfield every once in a while back when he was playing principal in Vienna Philharmonic, and he'd say, "Oh, you're playing Lucia, and the poor thing for you guys, you have to rehearse it." So it's like not only you have to play it, you have to rehearse it too. So I mean, yeah, it's busy, yeah. And then you stack some teaching and other stuff on top of that, a bunch of other side projects, and you're working all the time.
Good gravy.
Yeah.
That's like work.
Yeah, right? It reeks of effort. Your
Yeah,
life does.
something like that.
So you said you guys are shorthanded. Are you filling in with subs?
Yeah. Well, what happened is one of our principal trombonists, we usually carry 2, David Langlitz. He retired a couple of seasons ago. He kind of went from having some recurring injury and health issues to retiring. And so I was filling in during that time. And then the orchestra had a fair amount of turnover. So we didn't fill that position immediately because there were other positions that needed to be filled. And then, so that created one gap because we're usually a 5-person section, which is 2 principals, a second, and 2 bass trombone players, 1 bass trombone who can also play second, kind of like the Wechselposaune thing that goes on in some of the bigger European orchestras. And then Paul Pollard took a position this year at Indiana University. So he left. So we're actually down to 3 people, and we hired Nick Schwartz from the City Ballet to play a 1-year position on bass trombone, and then we've been filling in with subs on second.
So what?
Nick's great.
What do the best subs have in common?
That's a good question.
Yeah, that is a good question, Lance. That's once in a while.
Thanks. I need a nap. I'll be back in a little bit.
The best subs, I think, especially in the opera world, is that they study. So that they show up and they know the gig, they know the repertoire, and it's easy for them to fit in, and they listen really well because opera just has a lot of moving parts. And if you haven't done it, you don't know it. It's like most people have played Tchaikovsky 5 before or Brahms 4 or whatever it is. And you show up and you feel like, oh, listen to the recording. And so I'll be fine given a couple of different tempos, whatever. But if you show up and you have to play Turandot or Bohème or a Strauss opera, that's a totally different ballgame. And that requires having not just listened to the recording once or having listened to it 10 years ago or played it in school, because you probably never played it in school. But having really done your homework, really having your antenna really far up and listening really closely and knowing how to blend, and also understanding your role in the greater scheme of things, because even our biggest stuff, even when we play it really big, it's still in some ways secondary. Even when you're playing the Ride of the Valkyries, which is like the thing we all want to play all the time, right? Or we've been wanting to play since we were kids, it's still secondary. in that context, so having people who
Sure.
get all of those things pretty immediately and can kind of just step right in onto this moving train right away without getting caught under the wheels, that's pretty important.
What about personality wise? How does someone fit in more quickly?
Just one thing at the Met is we try our best not to take ourselves too seriously. I think part of that is because we work so much and we're there for so many hours that you end up seeing the people that you work with probably more than you see your family or your wife. So part of it is understanding that you should be laid back, take it easy. It's like, do your job seriously, but don't take yourself too seriously is kind of the MO that I see. So if you come in and you're a little bit too intense, that really doesn't fit. Or if you're vibing people because one little thing goes wrong, we're not really into that either, because we play so much that if you take yourself that seriously and you're that intense, you're going to burn out real fast. I remember we did a performance of Valkyria. I think we were doing a rehearsal actually, and it was Lauren Mazel at the time. We got done with Act 1, and he said something to the effect of, ladies and gentlemen, in the time it took us to play Act 1 of Valkyria, you could have played Brahms 1 3 times. And we're done with Act 1, So, if you think by the time you play a Wagner symphony or a Wagner opera or whatever, you probably could have played a Brahms symphony 7 times. If someone chips one note somewhere in Act 3 and you kind of turn and roll your eyes at them, it's kind of like, you got to be kidding. That'd be like if in a symphony orchestra you made one chip every 3 weeks.
I'd freak the chorus out too if you played the Brahms 3 times in a row.
Yeah,
looking
exactly.
Wait a minute, I don't think that's right.
So when Mazel said that, did the orchestra chuckle, or did that piss some people off?
I think it was a mixed bag.
How was that received?
Depends on how people were feeling, how that particular person was feeling that day. I thought it was kind of funny,
Right. I think it's pretty funny too. But I'm also the guy that I would always enjoy saying to band members, like when we were flying to Asia and we were 3 hours in, and I would love to be the guy like, only 10 hours left, and get a look shot at me. But that's why they called me the helper, right, Lance?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that trip's worth it though. Japan's awesome.
Yes, it is. So you mentioned teaching. Tell us where you teach. It's a lot of places actually.
Yeah, I'm kind of glad my wife stepped out of the room, because she's always telling me that I need to start quitting jobs instead of taking them. So
Lance, if you actually need a consultant about quitting stuff, both Lance and I are really good. Yeah. So
all right, maybe we'll have a follow-up conversation after the interview's over.
There you go.
Intervention.
It'll be on the house.
Awesome. So I teach at Rutgers Bard College. I'm the head of the brass department at Mannes College, and I have some students there and teach class, and also Juilliard Pre-College.
Yeah, that's too much.
Yeah, you're right.
Stop it.
You're right.
Yeah, put your wife. Why don't you put your wife on for like 10 minutes? We'll talk. That'd be awesome if we could have an angry wife segment of every or angry husband segment of every interview.
If you start that, it's going to take a lot more than 10 minutes, man.
Fair enough. We do have another interview scheduled at 10:30, so maybe we'll do that next time.
Pass.
So. What's your favorite part about teaching?
I just like helping people. I really enjoy it. I think that's why I keep doing it. I just like seeing people progress and helping turn the light on for some people who otherwise, at previous times weren't able to understand how to make something work. And watching the students who really commit to it and really work hard, be successful, it's just a fantastic thing to observe. I just like it. My mom was a teacher. She's now a principal in elementary school. My dad's degree was in elementary education. He's in business now, but that's what he did. I think we just have a history of teaching in the family. I've always enjoyed it. I started teaching when I was in high school, actually. Believe it or not, I was teaching before I had a teacher, because I didn't really take private lessons. I never took private lessons in junior high or high school really on a regular basis, but I remember making region band and region orchestra, all those different things in high school. And what's interesting in Texas, I'm not sure how they do it in other states, but when you're playing your audition for region band, you have to play your audition in front of all the other trombone kids. So they'll put like 40 kids in a room, and they'll just say, okay, like number 38, you go and play the first etude, and then you go sit down and everyone else finishes playing etude number 1. Then you go up and play number 2 in front of everybody. You just sit in a little desk and just wait your turn.
That's so
Texas. It's like a rodeo, right? Or it's like a gunfight. Actually, I think that's probably the better thing. It's basically. And we had some intense battles, man, because Texas had a lot of good trombone players. But
sure.
Yeah, as a side note, Tim Higgins, principal of San Francisco Symphony, he and I went to high school together, and we used to sit in geometry class together, stuff like that. We were right next to each other. Anyways, the point. Go ahead. Sorry.
So the two of you are I'm just trying to. Every once in a while you hear about some incredible musician was in school at the same time as another incredible musician, but you two trombone players were in the same high school band.
Yeah. First and second
That's
chair
insane.
right next to each other, and sat in regular class together, marching band together. We graduated in the same class, the whole deal.
So everyone will yell at me if I don't ask this question. Who was first chair and who was second chair?
It rotated, actually.
There's the answer.
What happened, Tim will probably laugh. He ends up hearing this podcast. Our junior year, Tim was first chair and I was second, and Tim also got first in the entire state that year. And he rubbed it in my face because we were both super competitive guys. And
I like where this is going, Weston.
And then the next year, our senior year, I kept beating him over and over and over and over and over again. And I was first chair and he was second chair. And I think that just, by the time we got near the end of our senior year, we were trying to decide where we wanted to go to college. And I remember we were sitting in our AP music theory class, and it was our first period of the day, and he got up and he said, "Hey, Weston, I've been thinking about this all week. We can't go to the same college, man. We gotta be separate." So he said, "I really, really want to go to Northwestern, so you can't audition there." And I said, "That's cool," because I didn't want to go there. I want to go to Indiana. You can't go there. And he's like, "That's fine. That wasn't on my list either." So I was like, "All right, we're good." And we shook hands and we moved on. And when he got to Northwestern his freshman year, he was first chair in the top orchestra, and I got to Indiana and I was first chair in the top orchestra, and we got to both as freshmen, and we were able to continue our friendship because of it. So it was great.
What a story. That's awesome. We absolutely need to have Tim on as a guest now, just to verify the details of the story. There might be some slight wrinkles there. So,
it continues. I mean, when I took the Met audition, or when the Met audition happened, when I won that back in 2005, the next highest vote getter was Tim Higgins, and
no kidding.
And then, of course, a couple years later, whatever, I was at the audition for San Francisco when Tim won, and he said, "Man, I'm glad I finally got you back." So, we're all good.
Wow. How did it influence you guys in high school in terms of having the guy that you're most, your closest competitor, you're also like buddies with, and you're in the same school, instead of it's the crosstown rival or from some other part of the state?
I thought it was great because, Tim and I were perfect trombone geeks. I mean, we would get to school early in the morning and play through the Arbin's book and Koprosh and Rochu's, and I remember one year, I think I went to, I probably shouldn't say this, but I went to Baylor Band Camp, and I basically photocopied the entire trombone music library, right? So, maybe I think the statute of limitations is gone. They probably can't lock me up anymore. Anyways, so
I wouldn't go back to Baylor if I were you.
So Tim and I would stay after school.
That's just general advice.
I made these spiral bound folders of all the solos, like Tomasi and Creston and Zwilich and all this stuff, whatever. And Tim and I would just stay after school, and I would play a phrase, he would play a phrase, he would play a phrase, I would play a phrase. We'd just go through the entire repertoire. And so by the time we were done with high school, I mean, we kind of had this iron sharpens iron thing where we knew all the solos, we knew all the excerpts and the etude books, and we would get together on the weekends and go to Houston Symphony concerts and stuff. I mean, Tim had a sunroof on his Honda Accord, and we would blast Joel Essie CDs, and we were into the stuff, man.
It's like this. It's like a bizarro world of an 80s
It's
love
yeah,
movie.
it's weird, but I mean, dude, we burned that slide area CD and the New York Legends CD. We crushed those things.
That's pretty funny, man.
Yeah,
I firmly believe that having somebody like that in the building with you, in the room with you, I mean, because he spoke the same language you did, and you were rivals ish, but you were more like cheerleaders for one another, or I should say, as much a support system. Because otherwise, if your best friend was I don't know that you were best friends, but if you had somebody who was that dedicated to being a baseball player or even a violinist, it wouldn't have had the impact that it did. Like the
Yeah,
as you said, the iron forging iron.
Yeah, ours was super specific, and we were just both really enthusiastic about it. So it was great.
Yeah. I don't know. I guess I'm sure it can work both ways. Andrew, were there like really good tuba players in your either school or district or in the state? Or I guess you went and did the festival, like you were around.
Yeah, I did the Boston University Tanglewood Institute thing where most of the people, my first summer there in the Empire Brass Seminar, I was 14 and the tuba players went up to age 36. So that was kind of my butt kicking. But then also Steve Dumaine grew up in Rhode Island. And so I met him halfway through. Yeah, he's pretty good. Actually, he just it won't be when this is released. Obviously, it'll be a few days later. But he just got engaged yesterday. So,
oh really?
Yeah, which is great. I was actually complaining to
tell me her name is Elaine.
To Elaine. No, it's not. When I was subbing with the National Symphony sometime last year, I think it was. I was playfully complaining to Matt Guilford that Steve doesn't really sub out of stuff very much because and a lot of tuba players don't, and there's only one. And so he said, actually, there is a way to get him to sub out. And I said, what's that? And he explained that when he was in school, that Doug Yo had 3 young kids, and that his kids kept getting him sick.
Nice.
So he said that he subbed for Doug a ton in the BSO because he was always sick. So I said, so I need to hope that Steve gets married and then has babies and then they make him sick. And he said, exactly, Andrew. So
seems like a long process, man.
It does seem like a long process, but because I was like, yeah, he's never gonna sub out Mahler 3 or Bruckner 4, because I wouldn't, so yeah, he was joking that was the route to take. So I said, so what do I do to make that happen? He said, I don't think you can do anything. So, but he's engaged now. So, but yeah, Steve pushed me a lot. And there were also other musicians in my youth orchestra. David Gordon, who's principal trumpet.
Oh yeah, I know Dave. Yeah.
Colin Williams, who's a pretty decent trombone player, who's, if anyone doesn't know, you should listen to his interview. It's incredible. But he's the assistant principal in the New York Phil. He was in my youth orchestra. Jared Vermette was also in my youth orchestra. So there was a lot of people that pushed me, but not like a direct tuba buddy, if you will. That would have been incredible. I can't imagine how valuable that must have been to you.
Yeah, it was great.
What about you, Lance?
I had actually a couple of fortunate things. I came up in the Stone Ages, so it was a very different thing. But at my school, so I was a trumpet player until I got to 9th grade, and then I couldn't play high notes.
Still can't.
And my face would turn like spectacularly purple, and I would nearly black out, which was hilarious, but not useful. And so my band director had been a euphonium player, studied with Leonard Falcone at Michigan State, and had been encouraging me in 7th and 8th grade to consider the euphonium. And I was like, no, I'm first chair. Everything's fine. Then I got to the high school and audition. I was dead last, and it was like, that sounds interesting. What did you say the instrument was called? And there were these 2 brothers, Willard and Tom Stevens. And Willard was in my grade, and Tom was 2 years older, and they both played euphonium, and they were both really good. And so then we became this sort of trifecta and sort of built off one another. And our teacher was a euphonium player. And then when I got to Michigan State, I came in the same year as a guy named Dave Cleveland, who was one of the hardest work. Like, there's like these workhorse guys, and I don't want to undervalue his talent, but he definitely he worked his tail off. He was always in the practice room. I was less diligent, and but it was this sort of gentle competition back and forth. And he's just a really sweetheart of a guy, a really nice guy. But it was just having somebody near me that was my age, we were going toe to toe every time we were auditioning. I knew it mattered. I knew that I had to pay attention. I couldn't just sort of coast through any of them because there was somebody else there that was going to bring it that day. So I'm a firm believer that makes a huge difference.
It's all about getting pushed, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think so, yeah. So, Weston, you talked about the fact that when you're teaching, one of the things you like is when you see a really dedicated student succeed. So what are there commonality? Like, this is going back, a similar question to the sub question. Do you see certain commonalities across the students who are those truly dedicated ones? I mean, is there something that you see about their personality?
Yeah, they follow,
or maybe their ethic.
They follow instructions. That's I mean, it's. I know that sounds grossly narrow and simple-minded, but it's true. I mean, there are students who hear your idea, and then they try to impose their idea on your idea, and then they come back and say that it doesn't work out so great, and it's because they did their version of what you told them to do, not exactly what you told them to do.
That makes a lot of
sense. And then there are the students who just take what you say at face value and they just roll with it, and it's not to say that everything that I say is correct, but what I tell students is like, look, just do what I'm telling you to do exactly. And if a couple of weeks later it's still not working, let's come back and we can have a discussion about it. We can ask all the questions. We can reassess, reevaluate, figure out something new that's going to work for you. But, there are certain students who are either immediately skeptical, or they go home and they try something out for 30 minutes and it doesn't hit with them immediately. And so then they shift back to their old ways as opposed to actually digging into something. So that's one. And I think the other one is that the really successful students are ones who just really love it, and they're into it and they enjoy practicing. They don't view practicing as work. They just like to do it. They're always consuming music, always going to concerts. They listen to a lot of things. For example, I'll give you an example of a bad student, and hopefully the bad student is not listening right now. But a student will be playing a particular piece, and I'll ask if they've heard the recording of the piece, and of course they'll say, "Yeah, I've heard a recording of this piece." So I'll say, "Now, how many recordings of other pieces in this style have you heard? Like, not just this one Baroque sonata, but how many other Baroque pieces in general do you know?" And like, none. It's like, well, that's why you can't play it. That explains everything we need to know about why you sound the way you sound.
It's not rocket science, is it?
And then the other kids, they're into it. They've listened to 10 recordings of that piece and 20 recordings of other pieces that are in the same style, and they're doing exactly what you tell them. And most of the time it works. Sometimes it doesn't. You come back and reevaluate and figure it out. And I've had 2 students in the past year that are doing really well, and they were both that same kind of student. If I had told them that the best thing for trombone playing was to go jump off the GWB, they would have done it. And and of course I would never tell them to do that, but they're both employed now, so great.
There you go.
There you go.
I just listened yesterday, the day before, to the Rich Roll podcast, and it's sort of health and fitness and stuff. And he had Lance Armstrong on, and they talked about all the controversy and whatever. But what I found really interesting was that he basically said the exact same thing, which was that he did not put any thought into the training except whatever the coach told him to do. So, whatever he said today that's what today is. He didn't question it. He didn't put any thought into it. He didn't push back against it. It was just like, this is the thing. And then he just gave 100% to the thing that he trusted his coach to have his best interests at heart. And then he just faithfully executed it as well as he could. And it worked out pretty well. So that's really stuck in my head. That's pretty interesting. I hadn't heard anybody put it.
You gotta get with a coach that you think is actually telling you the truth and that you think you can value their opinion. Yeah. But after that, you kind of, if you show up to that particular school, hopefully you're there because you feel comfortable buying into the program.
Sure. Yeah, there's always a
Yeah.
lot of students
I
that
guess
are
I
looking
was
for
just
that are looking for
go ahead.
shortcuts. And our interview
Yeah.
our interview with John Rojak was hilarious, as you would imagine, and because he's crazy, but and he was talking about shortcuts, in particular one student. I won't spoil the story; just go listen to it. But you don't have a full bladder when you do, because his responses to this guy who was trying to learn something really quickly was acidic and dry and awesome. But I think acidic, dry, and awesome. I think I just described John Rojak like in 3 words. I don't know how I did that, but
Nice.
and a genius. But so maybe 4. But the one of my favorite lines I've ever heard in a masterclass was David Zirkle, who is just a phenomenal player and teacher and human. And he just got married. He just got back from his honeymoon. All these tuba players are getting hitched. Zirkle told one of my students that if they practiced lip trills every single day for 2 straight weeks, that 2 weeks from now, the lip trill fairy would pay them a visit and would bless them with the ability to do lip trills.
Nice.
And it was like, yeah, the student just kind of smiled and kind of lowered his head, but in like a positive way, and the whole room laughed. And he was like, yeah, you just need to do it every day for 14 straight days. And you will immediately be visited by the ability to at least do this poorly. And then from there, it's like, it's kind of a downhill ride from there. You just keep doing it. And then once you can kind of cross that barrier, but I love how he put that. But
I'm totally stealing that. That's great.
Yeah, right?
That's
It's great.
I like that. That applies to a lot of things. I'm taking that.
It sure does. Your website, there are playing tips on your website which are just fantastic. They're like really good. There's some of them that are just bullet points, there are others that are longer articles. Everyone, and we'll link to this in the show notes, but everyone needs to go to Weston Sprott with 2Ts.com and click on the blog and click on the playing tips. I found one for an example that's like super quick, but that it's short. And I love like high protein stuff like this, which this podcast is not. But it's called "New Concepts New Can Be Good." New concepts often seem strange. That's because they are new. I often give students an exercise or concept that is new to them, and because it is new, it feels strange. In general, the bottom line is, quote, if it sounds good, it is good, end quote. Be comfortable with doing something that feels awkward if it works for you. If you practice consistently enough, it will feel like your new default in a few weeks. That's like a call to arms right there. I love it. Can you talk about your website? And you've obviously put a lot of time into it, which is it's an awesome resource.
Oh, thanks. I mean, I put it together several years ago, and with the help of a friend, Bert Mason. He's a trombone player as well. And I actually, every time I think about my website, I feel like I wish I'd done more with it, or I'd do more with it more often, because when I have time, which is not that often, I'll add something to it. But I really, my vision for that site, and I'd like to build it out even more, was to not make it a glorified business card.
Right.
I didn't want to put something up that's like, okay, here's me playing 20 crazy pieces and I'm really special, and if you want me to come play, you can call me, that type of thing. I wanted it to be something that could be helpful for people. So that's kind of where, that was my point of departure, is what can I do to help? One of my favorite websites as a kid was Joe Alessi's website. Just the fact that he had a handful of playing tips on his website. It was like, you should practice slurs and this and that or whatever. You should organize your practice in this order. I found that to be much more interesting than clips of people playing, or, someone's really lengthy biography. So that's where I started. And also my first teacher in college was Carl Linthy, and he had a masterclass handout, which when he would go and do a masterclass, he'd hand this thing out and it had a list of things that he had really thought about and wanted it, he wanted to use that as something for people to generate questions. Ask a question about this. And he kind of made them shorthanded so that the explanation wasn't there and it would spark people to want to ask. And so I started with something like that. I was like, let me start with my own masterclass handout. Let me make a list of the big fundamental sections of the instrument, and then I'll start filling them in as I have time. So that's kind of the genesis of that.
It's a really great resource. Yeah, again, I would encourage everybody to go check it out. And there's some that are trombone specific, and then there are others that are wind instrument specific, and then there's other stuff that's just it's just kind of general knowledge. So yeah,
Yeah,
it's a really great resource. So thank you for putting that out into the world.
absolutely. Yeah.
So you have done a lot recently in terms of diversity and inclusion, and trying to make our industry a little bit more reflective of society as a whole. Can you talk to us a little bit about those initiatives, and then what it's like to be a minority in the professional classical world today? Or at least I shouldn't ask you to speak for that in general. What it's like for you to be a minority in the orchestral world today?
Sure. The diversity inclusion thing is kind of a hot button topic now in all industries. Like Apple and Google have both hired vice presidents of diversity and inclusion at their companies, and it's becoming a major thing. A lot of foundations that support classical music are talking about it a lot, trying to figure out what they can do to make our organizations more reflective of our society. And my understanding is that of all industries, classical music is the least diverse of all. Like all, if you can believe that. It's not like one of the least, it's the least.
Wow.
And we're also an industry that's I think beginning to pay a clear price for that. So the statistics say that of American orchestras, 1.8% of the musicians are African American, and 2.5% of them are Latin American. And you can probably gather that's not a close reflection of what society in America is in general, where African American population is around 13%, and the Latin population is probably closer to 20%. So
Wow.
we're missing a lot there. And what that means realistically is that our organizations aren't diverse, but also audiences come to our concerts and they think classical music is supposed to be this worldly inclusive thing with this this language that speaks to everyone. That's kind of our calling card. It's, music speaks across different languages, all these different things. And they look on stage, or they see the list of people who are on the board or in administration or who's conducting, and they say, this isn't really that diverse and inclusive and cultured at all. And so that creates a problem. And then organizations or big funders don't want to donate to it because it seems like this isn't really part of the mission. I actually had someone tell me, they said that when orchestras, or even groups like the League of American Orchestras or the Union or whatever, go to lobby Congress, that they have a difficult time keeping the nonprofit status sometimes for orchestras, because they think this is the domain of very, very wealthy white people. This isn't really something that serves the community as a whole. And of course, those of us who play in these orchestras, we don't really believe that. But I can see why the optics would come across that way.
Sure.
So that's definitely something that we have to address, not only for the funding purposes, but because we do want it to be something that everyone feels comfortable coming, that people want to come, and that the people who are there feel like they're part of something that's reflective of society also. So, I've been involved with some different initiatives, doing some consulting work. A friend and I put together a big presentation at the Regional Orchestra Players Association conference this year. And we're working on a national audition support network for African American, Latin American musicians. So we've been doing a lot of different things. And beyond that, I think another part of it is, if we don't get more people on stage doing this type of work, we're not going to get the next wave of people to be on stage, because people generally, they're naturally inclined to follow in the footsteps of people who look like them.
Sure.
What's interesting is I was reading this book the other day, and there's actually a study on kids and toys, right? So there are these little 3-year-olds or 2 or 3-year-olds. You might find this interesting since you have a 3-year-old, who are shown different pictures of kids playing with 2 different toys. Like, these boys are playing with some toy that's called a trinket, and the girls are playing with a toy that's called a blanket or whatever. Neither of them are more interesting than the other. And then, so they're showing these different flashcards, these kids playing with these toys. And at the end of it, the kids are asked, which toy do you want to play with? And the boys want to play with the toy that they saw the boy on the flashcard playing. And the girls want to play with the one that they saw the girl playing with. Not because one's cooler than the other, just because the person who most seems like me, that's what they do. So that's what I want to do.
Right.
And right now we don't have a lot of that. And, the reason why I decided I wanted to play trombone is because my dad told me that he had played when he was in junior high and high school, and my cousin had played in high school. So I thought that seems like that's a cool thing to do. So I'll try that. And then one day I was at my cousin's house, and he was a big jazz fan. He had this huge CD collection. And I went upstairs, and he had the Carnival CD of Wynton Marsalis, which everybody's heard, right? And so I popped that in and listened to this, and I went, holy crap. So that's what people can do on these things. So then I wanted to do that, and I thought that was really cool. And then, fast forward several years later, I've been practicing like crazy. And told my dad, I really want to go to a symphony concert. My friend Tim Higgins told me that the orchestra is doing Mahler 3, and there's a trombone solo or something in that. So maybe we should go see that one. That was the depth of my knowledge about Mahler 3 back then. So we went and saw it, and it was amazing, as you can imagine. And my dad took me, and we're in the car leaving the concert, and I said, man, that was incredible. I said, I want to do that. I think I could do that for a living. And he said, yeah. He said, well, he said, there weren't any black folks on the stage. And I said, well, that's true. Maybe I could be the first. And he kind of said, yeah, maybe you could be. I don't know. And then a handful of years later, I go to Indiana University, and we had a Indiana University ITA, like International Trombone Association branch. And we all took a road trip to go see the Chicago Symphony play. And I thought that was the coolest thing also. And I remember sitting up there and remember what my dad said. And it was like, there's no black folks on stage here either. So,
that was pre-Taga.
Yeah, and now that he's there, he's the one, one of 105. He's the one.
Yeah. That's
it's incredible.
Yeah. So, that's kind of the way that went. And then I had the good fortune of being in the Sphinx organization, and I met Stephen Wilson, who was African-American in the Atlanta Symphony, and this guy, Langston Fitzgerald. And they both said, yeah, man, you could play, you could do it. And it made me realize, okay, well, I don't have to be the first. So that's good news, because carrying that burden around is not the best thing. And then eventually it all worked out, and to bring that story kind of full circle, because I always find this story to be kind of meaningful, is that during my first season in the orchestra, I finished a show, and I was walking home, and I was walking down the street, and who's walking down the street in the opposite direction? It's Wynton Marsalis, right? So, this guy's been a hero of mine since I was 12 or something. So I stop him on the street and I say, hey, Mr. Marsalis, I'm so sorry to bother you, but I had to meet you. I'm Weston Sprott. I play in the Met. And he said, yeah, man, I know who you are. I said, really? I said, okay. And he said, back when I was at Juilliard, I used to go to the Met all the time, and there were no brothers in the Met. And he said, and now there's 2 or 3 of you, because at the time it was myself, Billy Hunter, and Anthony McGill, who's now gone on to the New York Philharmonic. And he said, I just want you to know it's important that you're there. He's like, and I appreciate. He's like, what you're doing matters. And I thought, holy crap! Wow. Well, that's how that worked out.
Would you let the listeners know, if they don't, what the Sphinx organization is about?
Sphinx organization is it's based out of Detroit, and their mission is basically to help expand African American, Latin American participation in classical music. So they run a lot of different educational programs. They also host a competition, concerto competition for string players every year with a huge grand prize. I think it's like $50,000 or something for African American, Latin Americans, and it's usually accompanied by an all African American, Latin American orchestra. And so actually that's where I first came in contact with Billy Hunter, who's now principal trumpeter of the Met, because we were both playing in the Sphinx Orchestra that year. And Anthony McGill and Jatik Clark. And, what's interesting is that if you create an orchestra of all African American, Latin American people, you can basically get all the African American, Latin American players that play in major American orchestras on stage at once. There's just not that many of us. So that's where I kind of came into contact with all of these different people.
So here's an impossible to ask question. How do we solve this? Like what needs to happen? It's a chicken egg problem, I understand, and it's impossible to answer in a brief soundbite. But help.
Well, what's interesting is I'm doing a lot of work that's trying to do that, and I have an article coming out in Allegro, which is the local 802 magazine about this. It's like actionable strategies to increase diversity and inclusion in your orchestra. So maybe when that comes out, we can link to that,
Sure.
and there'll be like a really in-depth discussion about it because it's there. But I think the first thing we can do is to have the discussion, to have people care.
Right.
That's one of the things. As far as like a very practical thing with orchestras, I think one of the first things we can do is keep the screen up the entire time from start to finish in auditions. I think it's a really valuable thing. I'm sure that part of this is just the way the cards are, the way things shook out, and part of it maybe has a different reason. But I can recall winning 4 auditions where the screen was up from start to finish, and they hired the person from behind the screen. I won those auditions, whether that was Philadelphia Orchestra Sublist or Pennsylvania Ballet or Delaware Symphony, and then the Met was also screened from start to finish. I can't remember ever having won an audition where the screen came down at any point.
Wow.
Now you can say, well, that's just the way it went, and that may be true, but there's real fairness, and there's also perceived fairness. And for people who look like me, you always have to, when something like that happens, or that's your track record, you have to consider, I wonder if that played a part in it. Because you just never know. And the thing is, it's not to say that I believe that most people who are on audition committee have poor motives. In fact, I believe that the vast majority of people who are listening on audition committee are really committed to hiring the best player. That's what they really want to do. They want to be as objective as possible and really get the thing done right. But the fact of the matter is that it's absolutely impossible to judge music objectively when you're watching. That's just a fact. It's not disputable. And for people who are listening to this, I would challenge anyone to go on YouTube and watch the McGurk Effect video, MCGURK. Watch that video. It takes about 3 or 4 minutes. And after you watch it, I defy anyone to say, I could listen to someone's audition not blind and judge fairly and objectively. It's impossible. So what you see overrides what you hear oftentimes. Even if you sit down and you tell yourself, I'm so committed to being objective this time, you can't do it. It's scientifically impossible to do.
Yeah,
wow.
Jeez.
Well, we'll link to the McGurk Effect.
Yeah, please do. Yeah,
it's so great that someone that is in your position and has your stature within the industry is speaking up about this, because it would be very easy for someone to, if they chose to if you had either never won anything or had not won much, in quotes, to say, well, he, she, whatever, they're just bitter because they can't win. And so that
right.
And the fact that you are the acting principal trombone of the Metropolitan Opera kind of takes that card out of that person's hand. It's like,
yeah.
I mean, you're speaking from a position of of success in the traditional sense of the in the industry sense, traditionally. And so it's great that you are speaking up about this. And I'm not surprised, because you're awfully well spoken, but that was an impressively concise answer in 4 or 5 minutes on a topic that you could talk about, I'm sure, for hours.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, at the end of the day, we have to realize that doing this will make us all better.
Sure.
A lot of times, different diversity programs or things like that, people feel like that's some version of watering down the product. But if we really feel like, for example, we're just using one of a million gajillion recommendations about keeping the screen up from start to finish. If we really believe that's going to help us get better players because we're able to actually listen objectively, not only could that make our orchestras more diverse, that's going to get us better hires. And we're going to sound better, and then more people are going to want to hear us play.
Sure.
So, it's a win for everybody.
Wow. Well, thank you for your work on that front. It's awfully important. Boy, talk about something that I took for granted, is that when I was a kid, I went and saw the Boston Symphony Orchestra. I'd seen the BSO about 200 times before I graduated from high school. And
Wow.
and I never looked up there. Yeah, Chester Schmitz looks just like me. Norman Bolter looks just like me. Charlie Schluter looks just like me. Then I was at the Empire Brass Seminar and saw those guys play, and Eric Rusk looks just like me, and Sample, etc. I mean, it's not even just white. It's like white men, and and I
Yeah.
never. I think it's incredible that you looked up and saw no African Americans and still said, well, I can do this. I would love to think that I would have done the same thing in your shoes, but I also don't think I would have been crazy if I had said, yeah, you're right, I can't do that. Because,
Right.
why am I going to be first? So that's a real testament to your character.
Or I don't want to do it. Look, these guys are a bunch of D-bags. I don't want to be up there with them anyway. Like,
yes.
this is...
And playing
ridiculous.
dead white guy music, too. I mean, it's like the further you dig, the further, the more entrenched it is. But you had different ideas, and we're all thankful that you did.
Yeah, and it's not that any of these people are bad people. I just think they don't all have an understanding of exactly what's going on. And, I decided to keep going forward and pushing forward, but I have a lot of friends who are incredibly talented musicians who decided to quit. They thought I'd rather do something else. I don't think that this field is going to be for me because of some of the reasons that were listed. But I think for whatever reason, I was just a little bit different, And I remember when I decided to become a music major, my parents were a little saddened by that because they saw the prospects. And, even for someone who looks the part, it's not the easiest thing to do. We all know that, right?
Sure.
We revisited the same conversations that all Black parents have with their kids, which one of them is the police conversation, which we probably hear about all the time now because of recent events. And the other one is the idea that you have to be twice as good, which, as Ta-Nehisi Coates would say, would be to expect half as much for your work, right? And I think that's one of the reasons why I was really drawn to auditions like the Met, and I worked even harder for them because I thought, hey, this is one of these auditions where the screen's going to be up start to finish, and I just know for sure I'm going to be judged on my merit. And if I lose, I just lose. But if I'm ever going to win and have a fair shot, this is the one. So you better stack your chips and push them in the middle and go for it here. And I was fortunate that on those days, on those handful of auditions that were blind from start to finish, I was good enough to get to the finish line. But the point is that I would hope not that we skew the playing field so that it favors other people, but just so that everyone gets that fair chance, or that they even have the perception that they're receiving a fair chance. That the way that I felt when I was approaching these completely blind auditions, that, hey, I will be judged on my merit alone. And I know that it's not, I'm just guessing or hoping. I want everyone to have a chance to feel that way, because I think that will change the way that people approach the process on both sides of the screen.
Good stuff. That's great. Well, you're not only one hell of a trombone player, but you're a role model for an awful lot of people. So, you should feel very proud of that. So, and you teach at like 9 colleges, I think, which is a world record. So, yeah. So.
Yeah, exactly.
I threw that line in there for your wife, who I don't even know her name and I've never met, but you can tell her that she's welcome. So,
absolutely.
So we are almost out of time, but
Okay.
we did need to. We specialize here at the Brass Junkies in awkward segues, and we cannot go from anything more important to anything stupider. But that's what we're going to do. So Jens Lindemann, our dear friend. Our dear Canadian friend has been having some pretty serious chop problems, and we're wondering if you might be able to offer him some. You're wise well beyond your years, and so we're thinking that you might be able to possibly offer him the ultimate advice that might get him through this. So what say you, Weston Sprott?
The best way to just deal with that and just be done with it forever is just you open your case, right? And then you just take your trumpet apart, and then you just put it in there, and then just close it, and then just don't open it again.
Leave it apart.
And then you're done. You're good to go. You don't have to worry about anything else. It's like you've just been carrying around a sack of bricks, and then one day you just decide to sit it down and just walk away.
So you're proposing that he not just put the trumpet away, but that he actually dismantle it?
I'm just saying, just quit. just be done. You know,
safer. You know, like
You
some people like disassemble their guns so that it would be less of a danger.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you go the extra
Just
step,
leave
and you
the
could
parts out.
you could lock the mouthpiece in one box and the horn in the other, or something like that. And like give someone else the key so you can't get back to it.
This is like emptying all of your liquor bottles after a bender. It's like where it's not in the house anymore.
When I never feel like I have chop problems when I'm not playing.
There's a quote right there, people.
There is he
That's
got possibly the most profound thing of the hour in at the buzzer. So there you go. Well, Weston, we're going to have you hang out for just a few more minutes for our bonus episode for our Patreon people. And but man, this has been an inspiring and enlightening conversation, which is like it's 9 a.m. on a Saturday. So I'm not usually experiencing either of those things, and I almost never do when Lance is on the line. So it's this has been a really pleasant surprise. So thank you so much for everything that you are doing, and musically and otherwise. And it's been an honor for you to be on the show.
Oh, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
And that is going to do it for another episode of The Brass Junkies. You've been listening to The Brass Junkies on the Pedal Note Media Podcast Network. If you would like to help support the podcast in order to make more episodes like this one possible, please visit pedalnotemedia.com/donate for more details. Also, be sure to check out our latest recording, The Brass Recording Project, at brassrecordingproject.com. The Brass Junkies is produced by Will Houchin. Executive producers are Andrew Hitz and Lance LaDuke. This has been a presentation of the Pedal Note Media Podcast Network.